The evening the fire came, I was in Naomi's kitchen slicing onions for supper, trying not to think about how thin she'd stretched the stew to feed all of us again. Storm clouds hunched low over Harper Ranch, rolling in with that tight, humming stillness that made the animals uneasy. Even inside, the air felt too heavy, like the whole night was bracing for something. Naomi, my mother-in-law, steady as sunrise, worked beside me, humming a hymn under her breath. She only hummed when she worried. Lately, she'd been humming more than talking. Behind us, my husband Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his cousin Bo Lawson. Bo was older by a few years, quiet, dependable, worn in the way good men get from working land that never loved them back. He'd spent the afternoon helping Daniel repair a busted tank valve out at the west pasture, and he stayed for supper the way he always did when storms threatened the roads home. Their voices drifted easily across the kitchen. Daniel let out a long breath. I can't stretch. What isn't there, Bo? Feed's due Monday, power bill after that. I keep saying next month will be different, but... Bo leaned in, elbows on his knees. Let me help. You know I've got enough put by. Daniel shook his head, rubbing the edge of an overdue notice until it curled. I still owe you from last time. Bo's voice stayed calm. And you know I don't care about that. We're family. That's all that matters. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Naomi's hands tightened around the dish towel. She'd heard every word. Something was cracking. I just didn't know yet how deep the break went. We carried supper to the table like it was any other night. Naomi set the pot down gently, as if it might splinter if she moved too quickly. Bow your heads, she murmured. We obeyed. Daniel reached for my hand under the table, warm, calloused, familiar. Bo bowed his head, quiet as ever. Lord, Naomi said softly, thank you for food on our table and the family gathered here. Stretch what we have, steady what we don't. Give these boys wisdom and give Ruth rest. Amen. Amen, we echoed. Spoons scraped, bowls clinked. The storm pressed against the windows. A bright flash lit the room white. Bo glanced toward the yard. Storm's moving in faster than they said. I better head out if I want to beat it to Stonehaven. You're always welcome to stay the night, Naomi said, worry slipping through her voice. I know, Bo said. But I've got chores at Lawson Ranch in the morning. Daddy didn't raise me to let that place go slack. Naomi's mouth twitched. Your daddy'd just be grateful you're still standing on it. We finished in a silence that didn't feel like peace, more like dread. Daniel pushed back from the table, kissing my cheek lightly. I'm going to shower before the power goes. You two stay inside tonight. We'll check the herd in the morning. We've been through worse storms, Naomi said, though her eyes flicked toward the back door. Still, Daniel said, tone sharper than usual, no one goes out. He paused then, something in him softening. Bo stood when he did, like habit. Daniel pulled Bo into a rough, one-armed hug. Love you, cousin. We'll figure it out. Just hold tight with me a little longer. Bo thumped his back once. Love you too, Dan. You know where to find me. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Fear, maybe, or resolve. Then he disappeared down the hall. The old pipes groaned to life with the shower. Bo shrugged into his jacket, hat in hand. Best get moving if I'm going to outrun this. Road to Stonehaven will be a mess if I wait much longer. Naomi wiped her hands on a dish towel, fussing because it was easier than saying goodbye. You watch those low spots by Miller's Creek. They fled first. Yes, ma'am? He tipped his hat to her, then to me. You need anything, call. I will. He stepped into the wind, coat snapping behind him. The door closed and the house settled into its usual evening quiet. The fridge hum, the soft drip of the faucet, the shower running down the hall. Naomi moved back to the sink. Hand me that towel, Ruth. I reached for it and froze. A heavy, frantic thudding outside. Hooves, not pacing, pounding. Rowan. She's spooked again, I said, drying my hands. If I don't settle her, she'll hurt herself. Daniel said stay inside, Naomi warned. She won't calm unless she hears me. I'll be quick. Naomi hesitated, then nodded once. Come right back. I grabbed my jacket and flashlight. The wind slapped cold against my face as I stepped outside. Rain spit sideways, already stronger than the forecast claimed. Up ahead, Bo trudged toward his truck at the top of the drive. We crossed paths halfway. You okay? He called. Rowan's panicking. Need to get her settled before she hurts herself. He nodded. Be careful. Storm's turning ugly. You too. He held my gaze an extra second, steady, unreadable, then continued toward his truck. I jogged toward the paddock. Lightning flashed, turning the pasture silver. Rowan wasn't in her stall. She paced the fence line, sides trembling, rope dragging mud. Rowan, I whispered. Easy. I caught the rope, but another crack of thunder sent her rearing halfway up, hooves slicing the air. It's okay, I murmured, guiding her toward the barn. Just a minute inside. She hesitated, then bolted into the barn, nearly dragging me with her. The moment the door shut behind us, I smelled it. Fuel. Thick, wrong. Not hay, not mud. Fuel. Lightning lit the window. Dark streaks gleamed across the dirt floor. Someone had been here. Rowan panicked again, slamming sideways into the stall gate, tangling the rope around the post. Stop. Please, just stop. I reached for the knot. A click. Soft. Too soft for thunder. A lighter. Right outside the wall. My blood went cold. Who's there? I called weakly. No answer. Another click. Another spark of orange bleeding through the slats. Then... Whoomph! Fire crawled up the wall and leapt inside. No! I screamed. Daniel! Daniel! He burst through the doors barefoot, dripping from the shower. Ruth? Oh, God. The rope, she's stuck. Daniel, hurry! Smoke surged as he dropped beside me, yanking at the knot. Rowan screamed and slammed into him, knocking him back. Move! Daniel coughed. Ruth, get out. I'm not leaving! A low groan overhead made us both look up. A beam sagged, blackened, embers raining down. Daniel, I whispered. It's coming down. He looked at Rowan, at me, at the beam. Just 1 second. Crack. The beam split. Arms wrapped around my waist from behind, strong and rough, yanking me backwards so hard my boots left the ground. Ruth! Bo's voice, ragged. No! No! Daniel! I clawed for him. Behind us, Rowan shrieked, jerking backward as the rope snapped, and she bolted into the storm. Daniel shoved upward on instinct, trying to hold the beam. It collapsed before the word finished leaving my mouth. Fire and heat exploded outward. Bo twisted, shielding me as the blast knocked us into the mud. Smoke choked the air. Embers hissed in the rain. I tried to crawl up. Daniel, Daniel! Bo grabbed my shoulders, voice breaking. Ruth, there's no getting him out. It's done. No, let me go. If I let go, you die too. The barn burned white hot, rain turning to steam before it landed. Naomi's scream ripped across the yard. My boy! My boy! She collapsed in the mud. I reached for her, for the barn, for anything. But Bo held me tight, arms locked around me like iron. All I could smell was fuel. All I could hear was Naomi sobbing. Bo's voice cracked against my ear. I'm sorry, I'm so damn sorry. The barn burned on, and the night swallowed everything I loved. Bo stayed. He didn't say much that night. He just sat beside me on the kitchen floor, elbows on his knees, staring at the storm like it could give either of us an answer. At some point, he scrubbed a hand over his face and whispered, I'm so damn sorry, Ruth. Not gentle, not soothing, just wrecked. The kind of apology a man gives when he should have been able to change something and couldn't. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Grief sat between us like a third person in the room, loud enough to drown anything else. Bo bowed his head, jaw clenched tight, as if he was praying or trying not to break in half. His shoulder stayed rigid next to mine, close enough to feel the tremor running through him, not close enough to offer comfort neither of us could take yet. Outside, the storm finally began to fade. Inside, nothing felt finished. Nothing felt held. Just loss and smoke and the weight of a night that had taken too much from all of us. The morning after the fire came gray and heavy. Smoke still drifted across the pasture, winding around the black ribs of what used to be the barn. I stepped off the porch barefoot, the mud cold against my skin. The air burned my throat, sweet, bitter, wrong. Daniel's glove lay half buried by the trough, stiff with soot. I picked it up, thumb tracing the crease where his fingers used to bend. As my gaze followed the splintered beams, something dark caught in the ash near the feed barrels. A rag, half burned and soaked with something that gleamed slick in the light. I crouched and lifted it carefully. The fabric was oily, reeking of diesel. Not lightning, not chance. Truck tires crackled on gravel. Detective Morrison climbed out, notebook tucked under one arm, hat pulled low. "Morning, Mrs. Harper," he said. "Hard sight." I didn't answer. His eyes tracked to the rag in my hand. "Trash blows in from all over after a fire," he said. "Best not touch anything till we finish the report." "Trash doesn't smell like fuel," I said. He gave a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Lightning does strange things. I'll be in touch once the state signs off." I straightened. "And when it does, what happens then?" He looked toward the ruin instead of me. "Case stays open 12 months. If nothing new comes to light, it closes." "Closes," I repeated. "And the ranch?" "Defaults to the next Lawson heir." "Who's that?" He hesitated. "Records will show soon enough." "Right," I said. He tipped his hat. "Let the Lord handle the rest." When his truck disappeared up the road, only the wind remained. The smell of diesel clung to my hands, no matter how I wiped them on my skirt. A clock had started ticking. Bo stood at the bottom of the porch steps, hands buried in his pockets, staring at the ruins like he was waiting for them to breathe. Ash smudged his sleeve. Mud streaked his jeans. He looked as hollowed out as the barn itself. "You okay being out here?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine. You don't have to stay." He didn't look away from the wreckage. "I know." A long moment passed, nothing but wind moving what the fire hadn't taken. "I should head back soon," he said finally. "Stonehaven needs eyes on it. Fences, cattle, paperwork. Everything I left yesterday is still sitting waiting on me." My stomach tightened stupidly. "Right. Of course." He stood a little straighter, like pulling himself back together piece by piece. "I'll be gone a couple days. Just enough to get things steady. But I'll be back before the funeral." His voice dropped, low and certain. "You won't walk through that alone." I swallowed. "Bo, you don't have to." "Yeah," he said softly. "I do." He tipped his hat, not in politeness, but in something closer to grief, and stepped off the last porch stair. "Tell Naomi I'll call when I make it home." "I will." He hesitated like there was more he wanted to say, something heavy, something unsaid, but instead he nodded once, climbed into his truck, and turned onto the gravel drive. His tail lights disappeared into the mist. For the first time all morning, the ranch felt too quiet, too empty, and I hated how much I noticed the difference. I wasn't ready to go back inside, not with his absence still settling in the doorway. So I walked around the house, past the water spigot, toward what was left of the barn. The air shifted back there. Still. Thick. I stepped over a fallen beam, the earth soft from last night's rain, and that's when I saw it. A boot print. Clear, fresh. The tread pattern stood out in the softened dirt. 5-point star shapes cut into the sole, stamped deep enough to hold water in the grooves. My breath caught. Too big to be Daniel's. No one else should have been back there. A chill slid between my ribs, slow and deliberate. Someone had been standing behind our barn, watching, close enough to touch the ashes. I backed away one step at a time, pulse ticking hard in my throat. This wasn't nature's doing. This was man-made. By nightfall, the house smelled like damp ashes and boiled coffee. Naomi moved through the kitchen, slow and careful, humming a hymn she couldn't finish. I set the table the way I always had. 2 plates, 2 cups, knife to the right. The chair across from mine waited, pulled halfway out. Steam rose from his coffee until it didn't. "Ruth," Naomi said softly, drying her hands on a towel. "You don't have to. It's just habit." She hesitated, watching the cup cool. "Habit's a hard thing to bury." Her voice trembled on the last word. I looked down at my hands, at the splinter cut from that morning, still raw. "He was supposed to check the wiring this week," I whispered. "He said he would." "I know. If he just waited another hour." "Stop," Naomi's voice cracked. "The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. We don't get to know why." I wanted to believe her, but the words felt thin. Then maybe he should tell that to the barn. Her shoulders sagged. She reached across the table, took my hand, gentle, shaking, and said nothing. Outside, thunder rolled far off, a sound that used to mean rain and now only warning. I sat beside Daniel's untouched plate until the coffee went cold. Chapter 3. Rain fell in fine, deliberate lines the day of the funeral, like heaven was trying to wash what it couldn't fix. One coffin waited beneath a sagging tent, cedar shining where the drops found it. Daniel's nameplate caught the light. Naomi stood beside me at the gate, black dress clinging to her frame, lips moving around a prayer too soft to catch. The pastor waited under the tent, Bible pressed to his chest. A truck turned in at the lane, tires slipping through the mud. I knew that engine before I saw it. Lawson country. Bo climbed out first, moving like a man carrying more weight than the day before. His shoulders were tight, his eyes hollowed by the kind of grief that doesn't ease with sleep. Cole followed, jaw set, storm banked behind his eyes. Rain slicked his coat, the collar pulled high, but not high enough to hide the patch near the shoulder. A block letter B, wrapped in thorns. Something about it made the back of my neck prickle. He noticed me looking and tugged the collar higher. Casual, not careless. Bo reached us without hesitation. "Aunt Naomi," Bo said, stepping close. "We came as soon as we could." Naomi only nodded, the strength to stand already costing her. Bo slipped an arm beneath hers, steadying her as they walked toward the tent. Cole followed a pace behind, hat low against the rain. When Bo looked up, his eyes found mine, wordless recognition through the gray. The pastor began, "The Lord is my shepherd." His voice wavered with the wind. I tried to listen, to breathe, but the sound of rain on cedar drowned everything else. My knees buckled before I felt it coming. A hand caught my elbow, firm, sure. Bo. He didn't speak, just braced me until breath returned. His palm stayed at my arm a moment longer than it had to, heat cutting through the chill. "I've got you," he murmured. It shouldn't have broken me, but it did. He let go carefully, stepping back to his brother's side. Guilt flickered across his face before the rain swallowed it. The pastor's verses drifted useless in the wet air. I wanted to believe the Lord was near, that he hadn't turned his face from this valley, but mercy felt far off, like smoke refusing to settle. By the time the last amen fell, the world didn't feel blessed. It felt empty. People drifted off in 2s and 3s, boots squelching through red clay. Naomi turned toward the truck without a word. I stayed a moment longer, watching water beat on Daniel's coffin, tracing rivulets through the cedar crane. As the last of the crowd faded, I realized someone was still there. Cole, hat dangling from one hand, the other dragging down his face, like he meant to wipe the rain away and couldn't. His eyes stayed locked on the grave. Flat, unreadable, but something behind them looked like a man standing too close to his own sin. For a long moment he didn't move. Then his shoulders sagged. He muttered something I couldn't catch and walked away. At the edge of the lane, a cruiser waited, rain streaking its hood. Detective Morrison stood beside it, hat low, watching. By night, the house smelled of wet wool and hot tea. Boots lined the doorway, coats dripped in uneven rows. Every few minutes, someone whispered about tragedy or the Lord's timing, words that dissolved before they landed. Naomi moved between guests with her apron still on, sleeves rolled, hair fraying at the neck. She poured coffee she didn't drink, nodded at sentences she didn't hear. When she brushed past me, her hand tugged my sleeve straight, an old habit she didn't notice. A woman I didn't know pressed both my hands in hers. "Such faith you've shown," she murmured. I let her hold them until the silence turned heavy, then slipped away, leaving the scent of lilac and grief behind. Across the room, Bo stood near the mantel, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor, like he was listening to something only silence could say. When our gazes met, he gave a small nod, steady, familiar, worn down by the same 4 days I'd lived through. "Hardest part's when it goes quiet," he said when he reached me. "When folks stop bringing food and start moving on like your world didn't burn." "You sound like you know." He gave a faint exhale. "Yeah, I do." The words landed gentle, truth, not pity. Before I could say anything else, someone called his name from the porch. He shifted, offered a small apologetic glance, and stepped aside to let a neighbor through. When I looked again, he'd moved toward the kitchen, shoulders heavy with everything he wasn't saying. Near the back door, an older rancher adjusted his hat. "He used to drink it black," the rancher murmured, nodding toward the cup. Then, almost to himself, "Fire like that don't start natural. Folks been talkin'." I could only swallow. The screen door creaked. Detective Morrison stepped inside, hat dripping, boots leaving dark prints across the mat. "Didn't want to intrude," he said. "Just paying respects." Naomi thanked him with a tired nod. His gaze flicked to me, longer than it should have. "We'll let you know when the state report comes back." He left a moment later, the scent of wet cedar trailing behind him. When the last visitors left, the house finally went still. I dried the final plate, listening to the faint buzz of the kitchen light and the tick of the cooling stove. From the front room, Naomi murmured something soft. Maybe a prayer. Maybe Daniel's name. Then footsteps. Bo stood in the doorway, hat in hand, raincoat draped over his arm. His hair was damp, darkened at the edges. "Aunt Naomi," he said gently, stepping close enough for her to hear. "I've got to head back to Stonehaven before dark. Got stock waiting on me, and a few things I can't put off." Naomi nodded, her exhaustion showing in the tremble of her chin. "You've done more than enough, sweetheart. Going home." Bo swallowed, voice thick. "I'll keep my phone close." Naomi reached out, laying a hand on his forearm. "Drive safe." He tipped his hat, gave her a soft nod, and turned toward the porch. As he passed me, he paused just long enough for our eyes to meet, soft, heavy, familiar, carrying the same 4 days of grief I was drowning in. He didn't try to speak, neither did I. Then he stepped out into the rain. The screen door clicked behind him, leaving the house quieter than it had been all day. I stood there a moment longer, fingers curled around the dish towel, trying to breathe around the emptiness, settling like dust in every corner. Then a low scrape on the porch boards. Once. Then silence. I froze, listening. The wind pressed against the windows, but no branches touched the siding. I walked to the door, heartbeat thudding. The porch light flicked on, flooding the yard in cold white. The gate swung open, slow and easy in the wind. No movement, no footsteps. Just rain, steady as breath. I shut the door, turned the deadbolt, and stood there another moment. Behind me, the kitchen light flickered once, then steadied. Outside, the wind rose and fell again, soft, deliberate, as if the night itself was watching. The night after the funeral, the rain finally quit, but the house still smelled of smoke and wet earth. Naomi didn't say much, neither did I. We just let the silence settle, heavy and familiar. Grief has a way of moving in. It starts with a night like that, and stays until it decides you're used to it. July came in hard and hot. Grass along the fence line crisp to straw, and the smell of rain hadn't touched the yard in weeks. Bills piled on the kitchen counter beside a bowl of keys and spare change, a paper mountain I pretended not to see. Each time I passed, the edges curled tighter, like the numbers were trying to hide how loud they were. It had been 4 months since Detective Morrison started the clock. If we wanted to keep the ranch, I'd have to prove what killed Daniel wasn't lightning at all, but something that could be traced and named. Time blunted the sharpness. The ache wasn't a blade anymore. It sat quiet and heavy, an old bruise you stop pressing, but never forget. I still set 2 cups some mornings. I still reached for a voice that wouldn't answer. Clothes that used to fit now hung loose, sleeves sliding past my wrists. I ate because I knew I should, not because I wanted to. Grief doesn't take your hunger all at once. It steals it in little pieces. If mercy had come, it came as dullness. I decided to take it. Naomi kept busy, the way people do when grief needs taming, washing curtains that didn't need washing, rearranging drawers, smoothing the same tablecloth 10 times a day. The house felt too big for 2, too quiet for remembering, too loud for forgetting. That morning she stood at the window, staring toward the barn's black ribs. "This place is dying on us," she said softly. "I don't know how much longer we can keep hold of it." I didn't answer. I didn't have one. The kettle whistle hadn't even finished before tires crunched the gravel. Naomi's eyes lifted. "That'll be Bo," she said. "He's here to pick up what's left he can use. Wire, feed, that extra tack." Heat hit like breath when we stepped onto the porch. Bo's truck idled in the yard, truck bed already half loaded. He climbed out, hat low, shirt stuck to his back. "Morning," he said, voice rough from dust. "Morning," Naomi answered. "Shed's open. Take what you need." He went to work stacking coils and sacks with a reverence that made junk look like provision. When he lifted the last bag, the fabric pulled tight across his shoulders. Noticing it startled me. Simple, human, too soon. I looked away. He wiped his palms on his jeans and glanced between us. "Y'all holding up all right?" "We're fine," Naomi said. He nodded once, then to me, just enough to count. "If you need a hand, call." "All right," I managed. When his truck rolled out, the sound followed us into the kitchen, measured, calm, like the world kept moving, even when we didn't. "Good man," Naomi murmured. I didn't answer. His name rose before I could stop it. I pushed it back down. That night, when the house went quiet, I tried to pray and couldn't. The words stuck between guilt and gratitude, between missing the man I buried and noticing the one still standing. Maybe silence was still a kind of prayer. By evening, deed papers were spread across the table, her Bible open on top like a seal. The fan ticked on low. Light through the west window turned the peeling wallpaper gold. "I'm going home," she said. "Back to Stonehaven. My people, my church. They're there. Been gone too long." "You can't," I said. "Not alone." "This place is finished." She lifted the insurance letter that said a lot without saying yes. Her fingers trembled once, then steadied. "They won't release the payout until the case is closed." I frowned. "And that could take months." She nodded. "Long enough to starve waiting." "You should go back to your family." "My family's buried here," I said quietly. "You're what I've got left." Her gaze steadied, the woman who'd taught me that work could be prayer and plain words could heal, shining through the grief. "You don't have to come," she said. "I know," I whispered. "But I'm not letting you go through this alone." Naomi's eyes softened, the grief in them folding into something older. Love, maybe, or the kind of gratitude that doesn't need words. "You've lost as much as I have," she whispered. You could still start over somewhere else. I shook my head. Home isn't somewhere else. She studied me a long moment, then closed the folder and laid her hand on the Bible. Then pack light, she said. We leave before dawn. When she went to bed, I started sorting Daniel's things. I told myself it was just packing, but it felt like stealing from the dead. The desk smelled of cedar and pencil lead, receipts with curled corners, a knife stone, rubber bands gone limp, a to-do list in his handwriting, order new belt for auger, fix porch step, call cattle guard. 2 boxes checked, one left empty, like time might still fill it. Tucked between an old feed invoice and an insurance letter was a bank withdrawal slip, edges creased and fingerprint smudged. Daniel's handwriting, $10,000. Cash. Stonehaven First National Bank, dated 1 day before the fire. My breath caught. Daniel never carried that kind of money, and he could have used the Brookdale branch 5 minutes from home. I turned it over, half expecting a note. Nothing. Just the number, bold and final. I set it aside and kept going, but the question lodged deep. What needed that kind of cash? And why drive so far for it? The cicada screamed like a warning. The kitchen clock read 11:48. I'd just finished the bottom drawer when a shadow flicked across the front window. They're gone. I froze. Listened. No branches scraped the siding. A dog barked once, then closer. The refrigerator clicked off, and in the new silence I heard my pulse. I checked the back door. Locked. Slid the chain we never used into place, and felt a little foolish and a lot better. I pushed the front curtain back with 2 fingers. The yard lay quiet. Moon silver on gravel, swing still, gate hanging crooked. Then I saw it on the porch, a plain white envelope, edges damp with dew. No stamp, no name. The hinge groaned when I opened the door. The paper felt cold, heavier than it should have, like someone had held it too long. I tore the edge and slid the page out. Leave it buried. The handwriting was steady, too steady, like whoever wrote it wasn't afraid of their own threat. I folded the note until it bit my palm and tucked it in the cedar box with the rest. Naomi didn't need one more ghost. If this is fear, Lord, teach me the difference between wisdom and running. I sat in the dark a while, listening to the house breathe. I thought about waking Naomi, stood at her door, but I couldn't do it. Not tonight. I checked the locks again, front, back, the sticky window over the sink. Then I took Daniel's hunting knife from the toolbox and sat by the front window with it across my lap. I didn't sleep. Pre-dawn tasted like metal and old coffee. We loaded the truck in half dark because it felt safer to move before the day chose itself. Boxes in the bed, bungees crossed, toolbox wedged behind the cooler. Naomi paused on the porch and laid her palm on the door frame. "Thank you for shelter," she whispered. "Thank you for enough." We climbed in. The dash clock read 6:12. "We're doing the right thing," she said, though her voice trembled. "Then I'll make sure we have something to come back to," I said. She looked at me, something like pride flickering through worry. We rolled down the drive. The house got small, then smaller, then gone. At the county line, the sign leaned, bullet pocked. Pavement changed. My heart kicked. "No turning back now," Naomi murmured. "Were we ever supposed to?" I asked. She didn't answer, just watched the first light catch the ridge. "Then let's go find out," I said and pressed the gas. By mid-morning, the county line was behind us. The highway unspooled into heat and dust, shimmering, shifting, the way smoke does before you realize it's fire. Daniel's old truck rattled like it needed prayer more than gas. I drove with my hands tight on the wheel, knuckles aching, because letting go felt impossible. If I let go, the world changed. If I let go, someone died. Naomi stared out the window, Bible open in her lap. Her silence wasn't empty. It was bracing, like she was holding the whole truck steady by sheer faith. When we rolled into Stonehaven, Main Street looked harmless enough. Sun-faded brick, sagging awnings, a barber pole that had given up on spinning. 3 men outside the barber shop stopped talking when we passed. Stopped talking, stopped moving, just watched. My stomach pinched. People watch before they judge. People judge before they strike. I blinked hard, forcing the spiraling back down. A flutter of paper slapped against the feed store board. Brush fire warning. Use caution. The edges were singed. Heat prickled up my spine. I could still smell smoke from months ago. Naomi said it was weather. My body said it was a warning. I parked in front of Bethlehem Feed and Supply. Bethlehem, Naomi whispered. House of bread, new beginnings. I wished I believed her. My chest wouldn't loosen enough. The bell over the door jangled and my pulse jumped. Too loud, too fast. Small spaces did that now. Too many corners, too many blind spots. Air thick with molasses and grain. Boots scuffing concrete. Everyone turning just slightly to see who walked in. Hypervigilance flooded me. Fast, hot. I catalogued exits, faces, hands. 2 men near the counter whispered, "Barn's been catching out this way." Second one this month. My throat closed. Barnes, fire, another one. Naomi must have felt me go still because her hand brushed my arm. A grounding touch. "Afternoon," she said to the men, like she couldn't feel my panic climbing. A woman stepped out from the back. "Naomi Lawson, Harper now. Lord, it's been 15 years. They hugged. I tried to breathe. Caroline turned to me. "You must be Ruth. I heard about the fire. I'm sorry." I nodded because if I spoke, my voice might come out broken. Patron. Then, the flyer. New Star Grip soles. Custom repairs. A heel printed into dust. A 5-pointed star. My heart stuttered so violently I thought it might stop. I'd seen that print in ash, in mud, at my barn. The smell of smoke slammed me. Real, not imagined. My hands shook. Someone had been there, someone with those boots. I folded the corner of the flyer like it was evidence, like it might disappear if I blinked. "Not now. Don't unravel in front of these people. Later. Later, you can fall apart." "Bo, look who's in town," Caroline called. My whole body locked. I didn't even choose it, just froze. Boot steps scraped concrete. Then Bo Lawson stepped into view, a sack of feed slung over his shoulder. For one horrible heartbeat, he looked like Daniel, just enough to make the world tilt. Same shoulders, same silhouette in that light. Grief hit like a blow. My knees almost buckled. Then he moved, and the spell shattered. Not Daniel. Never Daniel. Bo blinked like he was the one blindsided. "Didn't know y'all were moving down this way." His voice was steady. Mine wouldn't be. Caroline crossed her arms. "Still short on help at the ranch?" "We're managing." "You're managing tired." That flicker again. Too fast, too subtle. My brain snagged on it anyway. Daniel had said Lawson Ranch was failing. Now Bo had the biggest herd in 3 counties, and Harper Ranch, Daniel's ranch, was gone. Smoke, diesel, footprints, timing, all of it swirled behind my eyes. I blinked hard. "Not now. You're spiraling. Not everything is a pattern." "You run Lawson Ranch," I managed. "If you need help, I can work." Bo looked at me like the request hurt him, like he wished I hadn't asked. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why?" "It's not." My pulse spiked. He wasn't saying no, he was hiding something. Or I was imagining it. I couldn't tell anymore. Naomi stepped in. "She's not asking for favors, Bo. Just work." His jaw clenched. He finally met my eyes. "You don't know this place, what people will say." "I don't care." "You will," he murmured, "and I can't afford to care any less than I already do." Something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. Finally, reluctantly, "One day, trial run, dawn." I nodded. He tipped his hat, turned, and paused. "And Ruth, the money Daniel owed? You don't owe me a thing." I swallowed. $3,000. Debt forgiven, sudden, unasked for. My brain tried to twist it into a motive. My heart tried to stop it. Both lost. Outside, his phone buzzed. His voice dropped. Same plan? A pause. Yeah, I'll handle it. The words ricocheted through me. Same plan. Handle it. Handle what? He pushed out the door. As he did, his sleeve jerked back. A fresh burn, red, angry, the kind you get from hot metal, or a burning beam, or stop, and Diesel. Faint, but unmistakable. The scent wrapped around my throat like a memory I couldn't escape. Caroline frowned. Boy's always running off lately. Naomi said nothing. Neither did I. My pulse was roaring too loud. Caroline hesitated, then nodded. You can stay at the deacon's place, she said. It's been vacant for a few months ever since he moved to a care home. White house past the old silo. Turn left at the cottonwood. Naomi murmured a thank you. The sky turned purple as we drove. Fields blurred. Breathing got harder. Then smoke. A barn ahead, burning. Flames clawing upward. My body reacted before thought. Phone. Bo. He knows fires. He saved me. A violent flash. His burned arm. Diesel. Footprints. Same plan. My hand stalled. Naomi grabbed my wrist. No, Ruth. Not again. Through the haze, people ran, a woman clutching her child. Naomi. Drive. I hit the gas. Gravel spit. The fire chased our rear view. Rain slammed the windshield, instant, heavy, turning flames into steam. But behind that, through the rain, 2 headlights glowed, still, watching, following. Or maybe it was just someone on the same road. Maybe it wasn't even him. But my body didn't believe the maybes. The lights vanished into the smoke, and I couldn't breathe again until they were gone. The smell of smoke still clung to my clothes when we reached Deacon's place. Rain tried to wash it out, but grief never rinses clean. It settles in the seams, holding on longer than memory. Naomi pressed a hand to the dash. Home's still home if it holds a roof, she murmured, though I wasn't sure if she was reassuring me or herself. The porch sagged in the middle, boards gray as driftwood. A crooked cross hung beside the door, its nails rusted and one barely holding. When I pushed the door open, the hinges exhaled. A soft, tired sigh, like the house remembered us from another lifetime. Inside smelled of dust and old hymnals. The scent of Sundays left too long without prayer. Afternoon light pooled across a scarred table. A crooked photograph of a baptism hung above a cold fireplace, frame listing to one side. Naomi brushed dust from the mantel. He kept this place decent. Decent's a start, I said, scanning the space automatically. Front door, kitchen door, 2 windows that locked, one that didn't. I didn't mean to check. My body simply did. The house creaked as if settling into new company. For a brief, impossible moment, it felt almost alive. A knock rattled the frame. The screen door banged once before a girl stepped in. Barefoot, braid loose, paint smudged, t-shirt several sizes too big. I'm Kenzie, Caroline's daughter, she announced. I made this place fit for human habitation. You can send love offerings later. Naomi nearly laughed. Nearly. You must be Ruth, Kenzie went on. Mom says you're tougher than beef jerky. Hope so, or Stonehaven will chew you up and spit the gristle if you're not. Are you always this descriptive? I asked. Only when necessary. She wandered to the counter and poured herself a cup from an old pot. Made this earlier while I was cleaning, she said. It's stale, but it does the job. She studied me over the rim of the mug. I heard what happened out at Brookdale. Her voice softened. I'm sorry about your husband. Thank you, I said quietly. Barn fires make folks jumpy lately. Used to be once every few years. Now it's every other week. She glanced toward the window like something was out there listening. Feels like someone's trying to smoke us all out. That many? Some say lightning, some say wiring. She shrugged. Truth is, nobody really knows. Naomi smoothed a wrinkle from her sleeve. Idle talk don't build bridges. Kenzie smiled faintly. Maybe not, but folks sure build plenty on it. After she left, the house settled into its size again. Naomi unpacked 2 mugs and a skillet, moving through the small kitchen with the calm of someone who'd rebuilt more homes than she'd ever admit. I found sheets in the hall closet and made the beds. Rain drummed the eaves. The air smelled of dust and fresh paint, like the house was trying to be a refuge, but wasn't sure it remembered how. Naomi leaned against the counter, arms folded. First night's always the hardest. Which number is this for you? She smiled softly. Too many to count. When she went to bed, she left her Bible open on the nightstand, lips still moving even as sleep pulled her under. I'll head to bed soon, I said. A lie. I paced the small living room. A faded cross stitch hung above the couch. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The thread had bled into rust, the letters soft around the edges. That's when I noticed it, the faint metallic tang at the back of my throat. I breathed in, regretted it instantly. Gas. I stepped into the kitchen slowly, every nerve tightening as if struck by the same spark that had stolen Daniel. One burner hissed softly. Flame dead. Dang it, Naomi, I muttered, twisting it off. But the smell only thickened. Kenzie's coffee pot sat cold. Naomi hadn't boiled water for tea. She hadn't touched the stove at all. Unease crawled up my spine, a slow, familiar chill. I checked on Naomi, still asleep on her side, Bible open, breathing steady. I pulled her blanket higher and eased the door shut. Back in the kitchen, my fingers hovered over the burner dial. Warm. Too warm. That dial hadn't been bumped. It had been turned. On purpose. Hours ago. While we unpacked. While she prayed. While the door stayed unlocked. Someone had been inside. Someone who knew we'd moved here. Someone who knew this house stood empty. My brain started making lists it shouldn't. Caroline knew we were staying here. Kenzie had been in and out all afternoon. Half the town probably knew by now. News travels fast in places like this. But my thoughts snagged on Beau anyway, caught on him the way a burr catches fabric. The same man who dragged me out of the fire and sat on my kitchen floor till morning, wrecked because he couldn't save Daniel. He'd grown up here, would have known about Deacon's place, might have even had a key once. And then all the other pieces my mind hated holding. The burn on his arm, fresh and red, the diesel smell clinging to him. The phone call. Same plan? I'll handle it. The way he'd returned to our barn so fast the night Daniel died, when he should have been on his way to Stonehaven. Stop. Stop making him the villain in every scenario. Beau loved Daniel. He saved my life. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Would he? But trauma steals certainty, and you don't know what people are capable of until the moment you wish you'd known sooner. The thoughts came in waves I couldn't stop, one feeding another, until I couldn't tell what was real suspicion and what was just fear arranging itself into patterns. My knees went weak, not from fear, but from the sheer exhaustion of fighting my own mind. I opened every window until rain washed the gas out of the air, the cold wind sobering and sharp. Then I checked the locks room by room. Front latched, back secure, windows tight. Locks don't matter if whoever did it has a key. I pressed my forehead to the cool pane. Outside, the street lay empty, rain hushing the night. Then, headlights flared at the far end of the road, bright, sudden, blinding before snapping off. The engine didn't. Rain blurred the yard into streaks. Shadows moved where no tree stood. Then a shape emerged, angular, still, a truck or a sedan. Hard to tell through the downpour. Beau drove a truck, dark, boxy, shaped like that. But half the men in this county drove trucks like that. It sat there, watching. My breath fogged the glass. I forced myself not to step back. Instead, I moved into the porch light, letting my silhouette fill the window. A message. I see you. 10 seconds, 20, 30. The engine revved once, low, deliberate, and the vehicle eased back into the dark. Kenzie's earlier words echoed softly. Barn fires make folks jumpy lately. I glanced around the kitchen, open windows, damp curtains, Naomi asleep down the hall, and felt fear tighten into something sharper. Come back then, I whispered to the night. I'll be ready. Somewhere down the hallway, Naomi stirred, a faint murmur of prayer drifting through the crack in her door. I almost envied her faith, still steady enough to sleep. I pulled a chair to the window and set Daniel's old gun beside me on the table. The metal felt heavier than I remembered. Grief tends to add weight to everything it touches. The light stayed on until morning, and whoever had been out there saw that it didn't go out. Sometime near dawn, exhaustion finally clawed me under. The fire found me the second my eyes closed. But this time, Beau wasn't there, dragging me out from under collapsing beams. This time he was nowhere. This time, I stood frozen in the mud while Daniel screamed my name again and again, his voice tearing through the smoke just like the first night. Flames climbed the rafters, bright, greedy, merciless. His shouting grew ragged, terrified, raw. I tried to move, tried to run. My legs stayed anchored in place. The roof cracked. His voice stopped. Silence swallowed everything. Ruth! I woke choking on air that wasn't smoke, lungs burning anyway. Naomi was already at my side, gathering me in before I could orient myself. Her hands trembled, but her hold was steady. I'm here, she whispered. I'm right here. A terrible certainty settled in my bones. In the dream, I could have reached him. I just didn't. The phantom heat still clung to my skin. Guilt clawed at my ribs like it had teeth. I gripped her, like the room was tilting and she was the only thing that wouldn't move. She prayed, soft and steady, her words weaving through the dark, like she was stitching something torn. Lord, give her rest. Hold her where she hurts. Let her breathe again. She'd been praying since the day Daniel died, maybe long before that. But prayer hadn't stopped the roof from falling. It hadn't drowned out Daniel's screams. It didn't ease the iron band around my lungs. I wanted to believe her words reached somewhere holy. Tonight, they barely reached my skin. When the shaking finally eased, Naomi brushed damp hair from my cheek. You're safe, she murmured. I didn't feel safe, but I let her hold me like I was. She lay beside me on the narrow bed, tracing small circles on my back, slow, patient, steady enough to calm storms. Sleep, she whispered. I'll stay right here. And for a moment, just long enough to breathe, I let someone else stand guard. The house creaked, low and uneasy, as if warning us to listen. Downstairs, the kettle began to hum on the stove. I stopped halfway down the steps. Naomi sat at the kitchen table in her robe, hair unpinned, a picture frame clutched in both hands. Daniel and Beau grinned up from behind the glass, one arm slung around the other, sunlight caught in the dust between them. She traced their faces with her thumb, breath catching on a prayer she didn't finish. Her shoulders trembled once and stilled. Tension pulled in my chest, sharp as wire. I should have gone to her, but I didn't. Some grief was private, the kind that collapsed if touched. I stayed long enough to hear her whisper, Lord, take what's left and make it enough. The ache those words left could have filled a canyon. Part of me wanted to believe he still could. The rest of me wasn't that brave. When the kettle whistled, I took it as my cue, grabbed my bag, kept my eyes on the floor, and slipped down the hall before she could see me. Dawn hadn't quite made up its mind when I stepped outside, boots in hand. The air was sharp with rain. From the kitchen window came Naomi's voice, steady, scripture-shaped. Grief for her sons braided through every word. I didn't wait for her to look up. If I did, I might not leave at all. The morning bit clean as I crossed the yard. Dew silvered the weeds, tracing the path to Daniel's truck. The engine knocked once before settling into its old rhythm, steady as his voice used to be. I gripped the wheel until the leather groaned. The road out of the town ran straight between barbed wire fences. Pastures rolled wide and pale under first light, mesquite clawing at the ditches. By the time the ridge broke open, the Lawson Ranch stretched below me. Barns weathered but standing. Smoke curled from the chimney of the main house, thin and honest. I pulled up near the fence, engine ticking in the hush. My hands didn't want to let go of the wheel. Last night, I'd sat in Deacon's kitchen with a gun on the table, watching headlights that might have been his truck. Now I was here, alone, on his land, because I needed the money, because I had nowhere else to go, because I still wasn't sure if the danger was real or just my mind eating itself alive. I forced my fingers open and grabbed my bag. Bo stepped from the barn just then, broad-shouldered, sleeves rolled, coffee steaming in one hand. For half a second, my brain lied. The way he moved through morning, careful, steady, like he was trying not to wake the day, looked too much like Daniel. My chest went tight. He set the mug on the post and bowed his head. "Guide my hands today, Lord. Keep 'em steady." He prayed like the ground might listen. Watching him felt like watching a ghost. Or worse, watching someone alive, when Daniel wasn't. I dragged my gaze away before that did any more damage. Bitterness rose before I could stop it. The Lawsons still had fences, cattle, a roof that hadn't burned. Harper Ranch was ash and silence, and I was supposed to let it stay that way. Keeping it meant more than land. It meant proving Daniel's life still counted for something, that what we built wasn't just fuel for someone else's fire. In the truck bed behind him sat a yellow diesel can, bungee strap biting into the metal. My pulse kicked. Breathe. It's a ranch. Of course there's diesel. But I kept smelling it, in my sleep, in my clothes, in the air last night when that burner hissed. The barn, Deacon's stove, the second fire. Diesel cans were everywhere. They meant nothing. Except my body wouldn't believe that anymore. And standing here alone with him, miles from anyone who'd hear me scream, I wasn't sure if I was being paranoid or finally paying attention. I told myself to stop, to breathe, to remember he'd saved my life, that he'd nearly died trying to save Daniel. The can still sat there, and my hands still gripped the bag too tight. When he lifted his head and finally saw the truck, something flickered across his face. Surprise. Then something harder, like a door slamming shut behind his eyes. He started toward me, slower than usual, like every step cost him. He stopped close enough that I could see the tired lines at the corners of his mouth. His jaw worked once before he spoke. Ruth. My name sounded wrong in his voice, too gentle, too familiar, too close to the way Daniel used to say it in the mornings. Bo. I couldn't quite meet his eyes. We stood there a beat too long, the air thick with everything we didn't say. I'm sorry he's dead. I'm sorry I lived. I'm sorry you're the one who pulled me out. I'm sorry I noticed you at all. He cleared his throat, gaze sliding past my shoulder like he needed somewhere else to put it. You ready to work? His tone came out rougher than it needed to be. Yes. Good. He turned away fast, like staying still hurt both of us. Pens are waitin'. The air already hummed with work when we stepped through the gate. 5 hands waited by the rails. 3 men, 2 women, dust clinging to their boots. Mara leaned on the fence, copper hair pulled back, eyes taut as baling twine. She didn't look threatened. She looked territorial. This is Ruth Harper, Bo said. She's working the line today. That was it. No explanation, no softening, just a fact dropped into dust and heat. The rhythm took over. Gate, brand, release again. Heat poured off the iron pit, sweat slicking the wood handle until it bit my palms raw. Every time the calf kicked, the jolt climbed my arms. By the 10th one, my shoulders shook from the weight. By the 12th, the iron felt alive, pulsing like it wanted out of my hands. Still, I didn't stop.
couldn't. No.
Work was the only thing that answered when prayer stayed silent. Beau's voice carried above the noise, even in unbending. Faster. Not encouragement, not quite criticism, just pressure. Or was it a threat? Stop. You're spiraling again. I swallowed hard and pushed through. The next calf fought harder. When I pressed the brand home, pain shot white hot through both palms. I gritted my teeth and held steady until it hissed clean. He was testing me. I could feel it in the way he watched without stepping in, the way his silence waited for me to fail. Or maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe he was giving me space to prove myself. Maybe he was making sure I could handle the work. Or maybe he wanted to see how much I could take before I broke. I didn't know anymore, and not knowing was exhausting. By the third calf, my hands trembled so bad the mark slipped sideways. Shame burned hotter than the iron. Daniel's voice surfaced, gentle, teasing, from the first summer we branded together. Don't fight the heat, Ruthie. Let it teach you. He'd smiled when he said it, the way only a man sure of tomorrow could smile. Now I wasn't sure tomorrow would wait on either of us. Easy, Beau said quietly behind me. I flinched before I could stop myself. Just a fraction, but enough that my body logged it as threat before my brain caught up. His hand settled on the gate, not on me. Careful, deliberate, like he knew I might bolt, or like he was being careful not to spook me before. Don't go there. His voice slid right into the space Daniels used to occupy when I panicked. Low, calm, catching me before I slipped. For one terrible heartbeat, my bones believed it was Daniel. The brand burned clean. Good work, Beau said. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt sick. Daniel used to say that exact phrase. Same tone, same approval. And for a second, I'd forgotten which cousin I was grieving. I cleared my throat, blinked hard, and stared at the dust until it stopped tilting. A whistle blew down the fence. Dust kicked up. Mara flashed me a quick nod. Grudging respect, maybe. Or pity. Hard to tell through the heat shimmer. Not bad for a first day. The voice came from my left. A woman with a wheat blonde braid and a sunburned nose leaned on the next post, wiping her hands on a rag. Alexa Walker, she said. But you can call me Lexi. Beau's got me running the East Line this season. You keep that pace, he'll have you in my crew before the week's out. Her grin was quick, unbothered, the kind of friendly that didn't ask for anything back. Appreciate it, I said, breath still uneven. She nodded toward the salve tin sitting on a post. Use that soon as we break. He acts like the only one allowed to blisters him. A reluctant smile tugged at my mouth. Guess I'll take that under advisement. Do that. And if Mara gives you the side eye, ignore it. She warms up right after the second week, or your first black eye, whichever comes first. Before I could answer, the gate clanged open again, and Alexa was gone, back in the dust, in motion like she'd always belonged there. The noise of the yard settled into a heavy quiet. Even the wind seemed to wait. Cole Lawson rode in slow on a bay horse, cigarette dangling from his lips. The filter was wrapped in a red band. He looked at me like he was trying to remember where he'd seen my face before. Didn't expect to see you working here, he said finally. Figured the insurance money would have kept you on your feet, even after everything. My grip tightened on the branding iron. There wasn't any, I said. The words came out quieter than I meant. My throat burned from more than dust. The claim's still tied up till the fire report's done. They're looking into what caused it. Cole's hand stilled halfway to his mouth. The cigarette burned down between his fingers. Still open? He said quietly. For now. Something sharp pressed behind my ribs. I turned away before he could see it. He crushed the cigarette into the dirt. Guess nothing ever burns clean, does it? Then he turned his horse and rode off toward the ridge, smoke curling after him. Beau's jaw stayed tight until the sound of hoofbeats faded. Then he crouched beside me, careful to keep just enough distance that our shoulders didn't brush. You all right? He asked. I'm fine. We both heard the lie in it. He let it pass anyway. He reached for my hand, turning it over gently. His fingers were rough, warm, too familiar. For a second I was back at Harper Ranch, Daniel wrapping a cut on my palm after I'd caught it on barbed wire. Same gentle pressure, same careful touch. But these weren't Daniel's hands. Up close, I could see the raw places on Beau's knuckles, the thin line of an old scar across his thumb. His grip was steadier than mine. Mine shook. For half a heartbeat, another image shoved in, those same hands on Deacon's stove dial. On a match. No. Daniel had pointed that scar out once. Said Beau got it from barbed wire when they were kids, cut deep enough to see bone. Beau had bled beside him then. He'd save me now. Both things could be true, and I still didn't know if I could trust him. His thumb brushed near the blister, and we both froze. The air between us went tight and wrong. He pulled back first, jaw flexing like he'd said something out loud and wished he hadn't. He grabbed his bandana too fast, like he needed something to do with his hands, then held it out to me. Wrap it before it gets worse, he said, voice rougher than a simple bandage required. I took the bandana without looking at him. Thanks. Neither of us mentioned that my hands were shaking, or that his were, just barely. He watched while I tied the cloth, his gaze fixed on the knot like it was life or death. Pain don't mean you're finished, he said quietly. Sometimes it means you're finally doing it right. I hated that it helped. I hated that it sounded like something Naomi would say. I hated that a part of me wanted to lean into it anyway. Somewhere in the back of my mind, Naomi's voice rose again. Lord, take what's left and make it enough. He straightened, glancing down the fence line where the hands were still working, like he needed to look anywhere but at me. You held your own out here, he said. Most don't on trial day. My brows lifted. That what this was? Every new hire gets one. A faint, humorless smile tugged at his mouth. You passed. It should have felt like victory. It felt like another weight I wasn't sure I could carry. Be here Monday, he went on. 6 sharp. I thought this was a one-time thing. Not anymore. He met my eyes then, just for a heartbeat. Whatever lived in his looked a lot like the inside of mine. We can use someone who doesn't scare easy. We. Like I belonged to this place now, to him, to all the ghosts we'd made between us. Beau turned toward the barn, sleeves still rolled, sunlight catching the sweat at his collar. His shoulders were tighter than they'd been that morning. His steps were too deliberate, like he didn't trust himself not to turn back. I watched him go and hated the way my throat closed. From behind, in that light, he looked so much like Daniel that my vision blurred. But he wasn't Daniel. He was the man who dragged me out while my husband burned. I told myself this was just a job, just sweat and fences and survival. But standing in his dust, with his bandana wrapped around my burned hand and his voice still echoing in my head, I knew I was lying. Something was shifting between us, something that made me feel like I was betraying Daniel just by breathing. And I was so tired of not knowing who to trust, tired of seeing threats in every shadow, tired of my own mind turning everything into evidence. If Beau had wanted to hurt me, he'd had a dozen chances today. We'd been alone long enough, but that didn't mean he was safe. It just meant I'd survived another day. I drove home with one hand on the wheel, the other wrapped in Beau's bandana. The sky was sliding from gold to rust again, clouds hanging low like they couldn't decide. Between rain or mercy. Every bump in the road stung. Every mile felt like something I wasn't ready to carry. Naomi's porch light burned steady when I pulled in. She was waiting, arms crossed, apron still dusted with flour. The way she did when she already knew more than she said. Rough day? She asked. I nodded. You could say that. Branding went long. Her eyes narrowed. And I got a surprise visit from Cole Lawson. That pulled her mouth tight. That boy's been bitter since his mama passed. Grief twists different in everyone. Guess that explains why he lives out on the edge of the ranch. Naomi's gaze flicked toward the fence line, disappearing into the dark. Maybe partly, she said quietly. There's more to that story than folks tell. Her eyes dropped to my hands. The skin was red, split around the edges of the bandana. Lord Ruth, she murmured, we can find other work. Something that doesn't bleed you raw. I'll be fine, I said, flexing my fingers. Even though it hurt, got the weekend to recover. She sighed, soft, knowing. Stubbornness looks a lot like faith. From a distance, maybe it's both. Her mouth lifted in a small, tired smile. Get some rest, she said. The world can wait till Monday. I nodded. But when the house finally settled into quiet, rest wouldn't come. My hands ached, pulsing with every heartbeat. The smell of smoke still clung to my hair. Cole's words replayed, sharp, careless, too familiar. I tried praying. The words came hollow. The walls felt too close, the silence too loud. So I grabbed Daniel's keys from the hook and slipped out the back door. The road to the creek shimmered under the moon. Every fence post threw a shadow that looked like something waiting. Crickets hummed, steady, low. The water was cold enough to bite. I waded in anyway. Jeans rolled, boots abandoned on the bank. The creek ran dark and steady, moonlight slicking across it like oil. I told myself I was here to cool the burns, not to think, not to feel. But the quiet had teeth, and it started chewing at me. I'm still here, I whispered to the water. Still standing. I meant it, mostly. Then a voice slid through the dark. Didn't think Harper was the night swimmin' type. My head snapped up. Two figures leaned against the fence line. Leather creaked. A bridle jingled. Their laughter was low and mean. Guess grief makes folks bold, one said. Or stupid. My blood ran cold. Did you boys lose something? They didn't answer. They just watched. Then hooves shifted beyond them. A shadow broke from the trees. Horse first, rider second. A voice cut through the night. Low, steady, lethal. Mount up. Both of you. Bo. The men scattered. And suddenly, I was alone. With him. You all right? He asked. I'm fine. You sure? He dismounted slowly. You scared of me, Ruth? Yes, I was scared. Of him. Of this. Of wanting to believe him. Where were you last night? I asked. When that barn by the deacon's house caught fire? His jaw tightened. So that's what this is, he said. You think I killed him? I think someone did. He stepped into the creek. Look at me, he said quietly, and tell me you believe. I'd hurt you. I couldn't, because standing that close, terrified, shaking, I wanted to believe him, and that was more dangerous than anything else. He let go. I'm not your enemy, he said, but I can't make you trust me. He mounted his horse. Lock your doors tonight, he said. There's someone out there worse than me. When I reached the house, the door opened before I touched it. Naomi stood there, Bible in her hand. You're soaked through. I'm fine. She wrapped a towel around my shoulders. The Lord has a way, she murmured, of dunking us in deep water, right when we're certain we'll drown. I swallowed. It ain't punishment, she said. It's truth. She squeezed my hand once. Some nights need silence more than stories.